There may be a unique opportunity in your real estate market, and it's FHA and VA assumable loans.
Let's chat about that more today on the Wandering But Not Lost podcast.
This is the Wandering But Not Lost WBNL podcast, where real estate and reality meet. And now your hosts, Jan O'Brien and Matt Emerson.
Well, welcome to the WBNL Wandering But Not Lost podcast, where real estate and reality meet. This is episode 219. You can find all of our show notes over at WBNLpodcast.com. Jan O'Brien, the year's kind of, coming to an end. We've been really busy the last couple of months doing workshops and sessions on business planning. We did a workshop just last week where we had a person join us from Spain. Hello. It was awesome chatting with her, talking about, she made the comment that you'd be surprised the market's not that different here than there. That was an interesting comment, I thought.
Absolutely. Our reach is far and wide.
It is far and wide. It was making me howl because we were getting ready to go live that morning at 10 o'clock and like 9:55, boop, here comes a new visitor. It was crazy.
It's great. And we're going to continue we're excited to go back to weekly podcasts starting in January. We've already lined up. Matt's got some interviews lined up. And we're going to end the year next week with the little year in review, which is our tradition here at WBNL Coaching Podcast.
Here's a little spoiler. Do you know what the number one Google search was last year?
No.
I'm going to give you a spoiler. I did not Google this myself, but I think you might have, Jan O'Brien, because you did a video on it that got 100 trillion views in Vegas. Cheapest gas prices near me.
I actually did a TikTok on that.
That's
on
what
our
I mean. Yeah,
TikTok.
exactly. Yeah.
So, yeah, man, because I use Gas Buddy. I was using Gas Buddy to find where you can get the cheapest gas. Thank goodness gas has definitely come down. What is it in your neck of the woods?
Oh my God, I'm not even kidding you when I tell you the gas went down 60 cents in the last 10 days. It was crazy.
Right.
We're down. We're not as low as we were pre-pandemic, but we are getting there. So I assume over the next few weeks.
West Coast gas, California is probably the highest. And then here in Nevada, I think I saw we're in the threes now. So 380, 390.
Yeah, the lowest gas here is still just in the very low fours.
Yeah.
But that's, we're always higher because we have higher emissions standards in California, and gas is always more expensive here.
There you go. All right, so let's jump into FHA and VA assumable loans. And, this is something that may or may not be impacting your market as you listen or watch us on YouTube. It really depends on whether or not your price point or you're working in an area that has a lot of FHA loans. But for a lot of markets, it's about if you combine FHA and VA together, it's probably 20-25% in most markets of all the mortgages that are, given. Now, why is this something to talk about? Well, a few months ago back in May, June, so June-ish or so, I started to realize, hey, the rates went up to 6, 7, up to 7.3 at the highest, I think, 7.37. I was just looking at that yesterday. And as of yesterday, we were down, as of let me just say the date. It was December 15th. It went down to 6.13. Right. And so we're right in the sixes. And so all of a sudden we were like, wait a minute. People that have FHA and VA underlying loans that got them or refinanced them in the last few years. We're not talking about somebody who got a loan, 20 years ago. They have too much equity. However, I think everyone forgot FHA and VA loans are assumable with qualifying. So there's a couple dates that they've always been assumable. So prior to 88 and 89, I used to know those dates. I actually teach pre-licensing. So I think it's 12, 15, 88 for VA. And then there's another date for FHA in 89. From prior to those dates, you could assume a VA or FHA loan without qualifying.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Of course, those went away. And then as of those dates, they became assumable with qualifying. So now here's the setup. If in your market, people bought their homes a few years ago, even 3 or 4 years ago, maybe even 5 years ago, and if it was VA especially, they didn't have any money down, and then, the FHA is 3.5% down, and those people have 3.75 interest rate, below 4 interest rates, and our interest rates are at 6 and higher, all of a sudden there's an opportunity to save a lot of money by assuming somebody's loan. So let's talk about how you do it. All right. So, or what it is. And why is it that maybe the setup is now? Frankly, I think the opportunity is right now if your market has FHA and VA loans in it. And for however long it's going to take for the interest rates to come back well below 5. So just think about that. So what are the things that are happening in the marketplace that would maybe make this a possibility? And that is increasing or basically stagnant supply, low demand, which is what we have right now. Interest rates either continue to stay above 6, and then home prices declining. So that's what we have in many markets around the country. The prices are steadily coming down. And frankly, a great analysis, and if you're able to look at this in your marketplaces, I can say with confidence that we already have erased, but we're going to go a little bit below. We've erased the gains in the Las Vegas market that we had in 2022. So we started out the year at 435,000 as a median sales price. We peaked at 482, and since then we've been declining. And in November, the number was 439.90. So we're already under January's median. For December, it was 425. I think we're going to end the year at 425 or lower, which means we're going to have zero, if not a slight negative depreciation, therefore. And that's why people who might have bought a house a couple years ago and have to move could be the perfect case of being able to assume their loan. All right. So equity shrinking. So that's the setup. Could this go on for a long time? Well, yeah, if the interest rates stay high and people have these underlying less than 4, less than 3% interest rates, right? All right. So let's talk about how does it work? So there are exceptions for this. So the first thing I have as a bullet point is the seller has to have lived in the property for 12 months. That's technically the idea. So in other words, people can't go get an FHA or VA loan and turn around and try to sell it, right? Or to put investors in it. Really, it's to put investors in it. If you have to sell your home because of moving and job transfer, that's not going to be a problem. In fact, I know of several that are the case. But generally speaking, the seller had to have already been in the house for at least 12 months. But I actually think that's not a hard and fast rule. So what's going to happen is the buyer is going to assume with qualifying the existing loan servicer for that seller, including the loan balance, the payment, how many years are left, and the rate. But you need to be prepared because I haven't personally done one. However, I have talked to numerous agents who have done it, and I've been tracking it for the last few months in this market where more and more people are becoming aware of it and they're marketing their properties that way. Yeah. But honestly, it's not a huge amount. It's just one of these things to take a look at in case you go out and take a listing. We're going to talk about that today. Or you have a buyer who has some cash that can now assume, and I'll give you a use case to show you that there could be some instances where this really makes sense for your buyer and or your seller. But it could take 45 to 60 days to close. Why? Because people don't know the process. So we've had a couple scenarios, and I teach a lot of classes here, and I've talked to agents who are like, yeah, we called the underlying servicer as a listing agent. And they're like, well, we don't do that. And then you have to kind of go, well, yes, you do. Here's the statutes. Here's the FHA and VA guidelines. You actually I'm going to have to go talk to my manager. And so it's kind of one of those things. It reminds me of the short sale days. Yep. When we started having short sales, nobody knew what the heck they were doing. Everybody went through the process together, agents, lenders. So, trying to figure it all out. That's kind of what it is for assumptions. But we already are having lenders out here put together, here's the process to do an assumable loan, but really it's not an origination. You're basically going to the seller's servicing loan company and going through that process, and the buyer has to qualify. So the buyer may or may, and here's another thing that I have in our notes, the buyer, and I actually have researched this now, and I don't even think this is true now, because when somebody first got the FHA or VA loan, they couldn't be an investor, right? They must buy that as an owner occupant. They have to sign something saying, I intend to occupy this. That's where this whole, do they have to be there for 12 months comes in, but I believe there's exceptions. So the question was, does somebody have to assume an existing FHA or VA loan and not be an investor? Well, we know of some investors who are assuming loans, so I don't think that's the case either. There's nothing in the guidelines from HUD, FHA guidelines, or the VA saying that it's not addressed. I've got an escrow officer that has been really in on this, looking it up and digging in, and we can't see it. So I think an investor could assume a loan, is what I'm saying. So what's the deal? The buyer has to bring the cash difference between what you sell the house for and what's the underlying balance. Okay, so if somebody sells their house for 400,000 and they owe 375 on their loan, that's $25,000 in cash. Now there are some closing costs, but they're not as high. There's typical escrow and title fees and so forth, but there's no origination cost. But in doing some research, the FHA has an assumption fee of about $500. They can also charge a processing fee. The VA has a 0.5 funding fee to do this, which is a lot better than the 2.3, 3.6 if you've used your VA before. So there's some costs, but they're not as bad as you would think. There's a processing fee, but there's no loan origination. There's no points. There's generally no appraisal. Okay, so that is really powerful stuff there. Now, one other thing that's interesting is, and I've got a couple people who have done this that I've talked to here in my market in the Vegas area, where one was a VA where she represented the buyer, this agent, and they came in and like put about $20,000 down, and for the rest of the equity, they got a second mortgage. So they were able to go get like a HELOC or get a hard money loan and be able, and now the buyer had to qualify. So the underlying servicer had to look at their whole thing. They run credit. They're doing verifications. They're just basically checking the credit worthiness. And is this person going to make the payment? And they have to also take into consideration, can they assume this payment with that other second? And in this case, she was able to get that approved. So for bigger equity, 100,000 plus, you might be able to get a second loan for the buyer. Okay. Everything is situational and specific to the case, right? So what else? The other key things you need to know. If you're representing the seller, you want to make sure that underlying lender releases them from the liability of that mortgage, because now they have accepted another borrower to come in and take over. So they need to be released from that liability. Just like short sales, you need a release saying we're not going to pursue you for the deficiency judgment or any of that. We got to say, hey, you're off the hook for this mortgage. You want that, right? Also, if you're representing a seller who has a VA underlying loan, they would basically either, if they want to use their VA again, their full entitlement, they would have to have another veteran substitute their eligibility for theirs. Otherwise, it ties up their VA eligibility. Now, that could be an okay case-by-case basis. Maybe somebody's not going to buy another house, or maybe they're older and they have no intention of using their VA again. Or maybe it's a married veteran couple and one of their VA eligibility is tied up in the house, which still allows them to go use the other person's VA. So there's so many scenarios. Yep. And on a VA, anybody can assume a VA. Doesn't have to be a veteran, with the exception of what I just said. If your seller wants all their eligibility back, then they would only do this if another veteran would come in and substitute their eligibility. Okay. So those are some of the keys to know. And here's an example. If you're listening, I'm just going to describe it. We have it on our YouTube channel. If you're watching, then you're seeing, this is a real case that we had here in Vegas that we had a buyer that we were trying to get this going for, and it didn't work out. But this was an example of a crazy amount of savings. Okay, so this was the situation. The sales price of $410,000. Now, we had the buyer. The seller had purchased it 6 or 7 months earlier as an FHA, and they had been transferred. It was a good transfer. They were going to a better paying job, and they needed to get their home sold. So they started up around $420,000, $425,000. They bought the house for like $420,000. So they started around $430,000, $425,000, and they couldn't get it moved. This cute little house, single story. So the difference here, ultimately, when we were at the place of potentially presenting an offer, we were going to be able to do it at $410,000. So at $410,000, I'm going to walk down what the specifics would be if this buyer assumed versus getting a new FHA loan. And at the time, the interest rate was 7%. So $25,000 down, okay, versus the down payment at 3.5% at a $410,000 sales price would be $14,350. So they had to have an extra $10,000. In this case, the buyer had that. The loan amount that they would be assuming was $390,000 at 2.75%.
Yeah, just a little difference there.
A new loan for $395,650, so a higher by $5,650 at 7%. Now here's the kicker: the underlying payment, which only had 29 and a half years, or by the time we close to 29 years left, was principal, interest, taxes, insurance, plus the MIP was $2,055 at 2.75, everything all in, versus $3,058. So literally $1,000, what, 1,003.
Yeah, it's crazy.
$1,003 monthly savings by assuming this FHA loan instead of getting a new FHA loan. So that's the potential savings. And you can see it is applicable if the interest rates stay in the 6s or higher. If we get back down to the 5s, or, and I don't know if we're going to get below 4s again, but it's very real that we'll be in the 5s. I think by next year we'll be in the 5s.
So too. Through
maybe below 5. It might still work. And there may be special situations. This is a great example of one where there's not a lot of equity. Now, I already set it up, right? It's this perfect storm of, if your prices in your area keep coming down, the interest rates stay high, there's opportunities for FHA and VA. So let's talk about how do you find them, all right? Because that's really what you want to know. So if you're if you're going after listings for this, and you already have a listing, or you know that you have a listing coming up, or you're looking for these, which is I'm going to give you some ideas on this. You would need to make sure, just like going on a short sale, you have to make sure you're up to speed with the process I just went over. So you would have the sellers contact the servicing lender to discuss the process and see if they've even done one, push a little bit, help them push, maybe get the lender to have the seller find out from the lender, what do they need to authorize you to speak to them? So when we did short sales, if you still do short sales, the lender won't talk to you unless the seller says, my agent can talk to you. Okay. So there's usually a form. So ask for what that form is, and then go find out what's the process. Are you guys doing that? Hey, you can do it. Could I talk to somebody that's above this person that you're talking to? Because the person answering the phone may have no idea what you're talking about, right? So you would need to look at the seller's mortgage note and paperwork, and maybe, they all have a clause in there saying the loan's assumable. So you can look at all of that. So get that authorization to talk to the lender, as I'm mentioning. And then now that you have talked this out with your seller and you explain the benefits like I've just gone over, don't forget to put this in the MLS. Every MLS has a box that says financing considered, cash, conventional, FHA, VA, owner will carry, assumable is one. Okay. Now, what's amazing to me is that since we've been tracking this for several months, Matt, we went from about 3 months ago, 16 in the MLS, in our Las Vegas MLS. When I checked, give me everything in the Valley that has assumable checked, financing considered. And I found 16. The other day when we did, it was 55. I still think it's a ton more that are out there. It's just agents don't know what we're talking about right here.
Exactly.
And we know that it's slow. Everything takes time. Just like when the market shifted, it takes time for agents to educate sellers and sellers to accept the market has shifted and I'm not going to be able to get that price. Same thing's happening right now where brokers and agents are like, oh, the word's getting out. I'm personally on a mission every time I teach a class about this. And people are like, what? We could do that? I'm like, yeah, we could do that. Here's what you do. And kind of covering what we're doing today on our podcast. So check assumable financing in the considered, put it into agent-to-agent remarks. You could even put it in the public remarks. Now, I recommend that you upload a document in your MLS that lists all the facts, because every time I reach out to somebody, I'm like, could you give me all the information that I need so that we could actually pursue what you're saying is assumable? What's the loan balance right now? What's the underlying interest rate? What's the payments? Have you talked to the lender yet? It's just exactly like short sales. And I used to call agents and doing the short sale days and ask them all the key questions to see if they knew how to do short sales. Ask them all the key questions, which is what I just said. What are the terms?
Right.
Have you already talked to the lender? How long is it taking them to process? What qualifications do they need from our buyer? Those are the things you would need to know, right? As a listing agent, you would want to get that from the loan servicer, put it in a document explaining to an agent how easy it is to do an assumption. That's what I would do. Then you want to market and advertise it. You want to do videos on it, or you want to post it on social saying, we have an assumable loan. Now, be careful. RESPA violations for advertising are going to come in. If you disclose terms, you have to disclose them all. So if you say you can get this house for $25,000 down, then you need to just simply disclose everything. The interest rate, what's the payment, what's the APR, okay? the term of the loan. You got to do that as respite. So I would just literally be blasting that out and using it to see if you can find additional people. And then you're educating people. You help educate people as you move along.
Jan, we talk about becoming the local market expert all the time. And that really, we focus more on just knowing the stats of what's going on in your marketplace and, what's happening. But this is a really good example of that, because right now, if you can demonstrate to your seller and or your buyers, just every possible option to get their home sold, you're going to stand out in the crowd, right? Imagine if it was the timing was right, because this is all about timing, like you've been talking about. What a great opportunity during an open house to be talking about this, right? When you have a new listing that there's an assumable loan on, because it's not something that people are going to be hearing as they're walking around looking at houses.
Great point, Matt. And if, as you're holding your own open house, have a fact sheet about what does it mean to assume a loan, and how would you do it, and how easy would this be if you have and listen, don't assume people don't have the cash. People have the cash. If people are going to put 20% down, that's what we're talking about in some of these cases. Okay. But again, it's limited, right? So let's talk about how do you find these? How do you market? How can you go find listings for this? And market to potential buyers and sellers. Well, the first thing is you got to continue to educate. It's an education process for all of us, the agents, lenders, sellers, and buyers. I really just be aware. We're educating you today. It may or may not apply in your market. We did a workshop for Long Beach, right? Well, they probably didn't have a lot of these, right? I talked to the broker, and there's not a lot of FHA loans or VA in that particular area, but maybe in areas that are outside of that in California, for sure. So your market, if this applies. So how do you find potential sellers? Well, you can get lists. You can do this. We can do it here. The title companies will help us, right? They will go pull the data for us. If you're in a marketplace where they don't do that, you still have access to this, because most MLSs have Realist, or they have some kind of tax. This is all tax public information. So you could find people who have an underlying FHA or VA loan. You could even find people who've refied, because that's the key. They had to have either originated the loan in the last 2 to 3 years. You could even maybe go a little further back, because of the low down payment, maybe even 4 or 5 years back, just to see. Or if they refied. So if somebody had, but again, you don't want a 20-year-old or a 15-year-old FHA loan, because they have tons of equity. They've been paying it off for 10 or 15 years. Yeah. But maybe they refied and in the last 4 or 5 years when the interest rates were so low, so that the whole key is we need low interest rate. This doesn't work if the underlying interest rate is about what it is now. Plus, remember, when people got loans those years ago, they were at 5% and 6%, right? But a lot of those people refinance, but the challenge is, of course, they're still going to have equity. So you can get a list of people who bought their house 1 to 3 years ago, and all the parameters for the area that you want. And just give you a recent, I did this recently with a title company here, and they found 10,000 homes in the Valley that met the criteria. Wow. 10,000. That's a big group of people to go do some marketing to say, did you know your home may be assumable with qualifying, and what's the unique opportunity that I could do? Again, it's to Matt's point. People aren't talking about this. This is how you add additional stuff to your inventory, to your toolkit, because you are the local market expert. And being the local expert and just a real estate expert means you know all the ways you can sell and buy houses, which means assumable loans. So I'm giving you a very quick masterclass on this today. All right. Yeah. And if it works in your area, then you could be the person going out and taking advantage of other agents not staying up to speed and not being, the local knowledgeable expert that you can go to that knows about everything. Right. Then, of course, you can leverage social media. You can talk about this. You can use it. If you're looking for buyers, you can simply say, reach out, because did you know the FHA and VA loans are assumable? And there's several that are available in the marketplace that could save you a lot of money instead of getting a new loan. You could have educational seminars. There's just so many things that you can do when you are comfortable to talk about it, like I just did. Yeah. Now, how did I become comfortable talking about that like I just did today? One, I had to go, wait a minute, I know that FHA and VA loans are assumable. Let me go figure out, and let me go seek out all the information. That's what I did. I went and went to other people. I found the Jill over at Tycor Title, who's doing some classes on it. I sat down with her. I started talking and looking and getting all the information until I had enough information to be able to go, here's how it works. It's not like the information just kind of came out of the ozone. I had to go do some work and figure it out, right? And so now I've just saved you that time. So go figure out if it can work in your area and be that person who's talking about something other people aren't, right?
It's not that hard to do, and to get out there and get that information. And I have to applaud you, Jan O'Brien, because you have really really since you've gotten back into really, building your team and selling real estate. And you talked about this in several podcasts over the last few weeks about how you kind of knew what was going on with the stats, but you really weren't the local market expert, 100%. But you are now, and you did search this out, and you do talk with such confidence and expertise when you talk about this subject. And you just learned this a couple months ago, or a month and a half ago. Mm-hmm. It wasn't that long ago. You know what I mean? So it's absolutely obtainable for anybody that wants to jump in and really work on honing your skills, right? Because you always learn.
100%. And it's like, this is just one example of many. Everybody basically been in the real estate business. You know enough about FHA, conventional financing, VA financing to get by. But do you dig into the other ways, down payment assistance programs? What other ways can people get all the ways right now that work for buy downs? And I mean, I talk to people, they're like, what's a 2-1 buy down? Well, if you don't know what a 2-1 buy down is, then go get educated. Yeah. These are the ways that we're getting buyers into homes right now so that we can get the interest rate down. Some arms are okay for people. There's 7-1 arms. There's some arms have a 6-month adjustment, which is a little bit scary. But there's so many different ways. Go talk to a lender. Sit down with a lender if you're not up to speed with it. You've got to have confidence when you're sitting down with buyers and sellers, or sellers who are then going to go buy, to be able to talk about all the options or overcome the objections that you're getting right now. Is now a good time to buy? Well, I think, yes, now's a good time to buy. And here's why. I think right now is a really possibly good time to buy if people have the money for the down payment. And, even if the properties are going to come down a little bit more and your goal is long-term to be in a house. So Matt, I'll role play with Matt right now. So Matt, this is one scenario why maybe looking at the market right now, I just want to run this by you. You just said to me, well, we're going to wait until the rates come down and then the prices come down because we think the market's going to continue to crash. And and I've already gone back and say the market's not crashing, it's correcting. Let me show you these charts. Like I said at the beginning, we're just basically back to where we were a year ago. Yes, well, do I think they're going to come down a little bit? Yes. However, let me just run this by you. If you are like so many people that we're talking to, decide to wait, and so let's say it's sometime next year, and the interest, I don't have a crystal ball, neither do you. We do track the market, but if everybody, not everybody, let's say 70% of people are sitting on the sidelines, waiting for what? What you just told me. The rates to come down below, like back under 4 again. Don't think that's happening, but I do believe they'll get to 5 or maybe under 5. Who knows? But let's say they're not 6. Yeah. And the prices come down a little further. If 70% of the people are sitting on the sidelines and that event happens, what's going to happen when everybody sees that and they jump in? By the way, everybody sees when the market is at the lowest after we're a couple months past it.
Yeah.
So then everybody jumps in. What's going to happen, Matt? Well, we're going to have competition. So here's why I think it's a great time right now. A lot of people are sitting on the sidelines. Right now, we're able to get out there. And even with builders, we're just at builders yesterday. Cosmo and I were at builders yesterday who literally have slashed their prices again for properties that they have on the market, plus offering up to 6% in cost and buy downs, special financing, 4.75%. There's so many opportunities to get you into a deal that is lower than the price that there are for a resale home seller or normal seller and a builder. Get your interest rate down right now. I don't know if we're going to have as big of an opportunity as we have right now because there's not a lot of competition. So if you know your numbers, if this is true, what I just said in your marketplace, you got to have confidence in saying that. Now, if you want to wait, great. We'll stay in touch with you and we can watch that. But that's what I think might happen if you're confident now. So, but then Matt's going to come back and go, but what if I buy today at 450 and it's worth 400? And I'm like, well, that is definitely, but what if the price was it was higher and I'm able to get you at maybe the list is at 450, but we can get you in at 430. I don't know if I can do that when there's a lot more competition on the market, because that's what we just went through. So we just went through everybody paying too much for houses because there weren't enough of them, and we still have a supply issue. So it's not like there's so many homes on the market, because sellers are also sitting on the sideline going, I'm going to wait because I have a great interest rate, and I'm going to wait to see what happens because, the prices are still high. So it's very interesting, Matt, right? So
it's always better when you're not in that, fevered pitch trying to outbid the next person. I'm just saying,
right.
It's just, and people, I think if you have a knowledgeable conversation with them and you're counseling them truly, like, you would obviously, or you are when you're talking to your buyers.
Well, and I didn't answer that. If somebody is concerned about, I'm going to wait till it goes down and then buy, then definitely they're going to have competition. But the thing is, Matt, are you buying a house right now so that you can sell it in 3 months?
That's right.
No. If you're buying to live in it because you want to build equity, okay, yes, maybe it's going to take a minute for it to come back up, but all the projections are showing we'll get back to 5% to 8% appreciation. And, if your goal is to live in the home, then you will make that up. But you're going to get a better interest rate right now, and we're going to be able to negotiate a better price for you, and you're going to get into a house versus rent. Anyway, that's the argument, or that's the conversation to have with people.
Just have to hone your skills.
There it is. All right. So that's FHA and VA mortgage assumptions. If it's applicable for your marketplace, go check it out and go be the person that's blazing trails with information and educating others, including agents, lenders, and your buyers and sellers.
Very cool. Good job on that, Jenna. Brian, we are going to wrap up 2022 with our annual year in review show. That's going to come up 2 weeks from, what day is that? What actual day is that?
I think it's the 30th, actually.
It'll release on the 26th, so right after Christmas. Is that right?
Oh, no, we're going to
right first of the year. 30th. Exactly. Yeah.
It'll literally be the 2nd of January.
January, that's right.
Everybody.
January, which is perfect, right? So it's going to be a fun show. I always enjoy putting these together. We, chat about what's happened throughout the year, and then some of our experiences in 2022. 2022 was an interesting year as we've all started to try to get back into what was a little more normal lifestyle, even though, things still rear their ugly head now and then.
Matt, look, episode 220 is the wrap up for 22.
Yeah.
2222. There you go.
And then it's going to be great to get back in and do a podcast every week next year. And like Jan mentioned, we're going to have our goal next year is to bring in a lot of industry thought leaders and people that will bring their spin to what they're doing and succeeding in real estate. So share a little more information from around the industry. We also have some exciting new course news coming up next year. We have some, we're juggling around some of our other courses. We'll talk about all of that next time we all get together in 2023. That's weird to say.
Weird.
I know.
It's happening. The year is going to be behind us in 2 weeks. I can't take it.
What is up with that?
It's nuts, really.
Crazy. All right. Well, any final thoughts there, Jenna, Brian?
No, I just wish everybody a very, relaxed yet stay focused in these last couple weeks of the year. Take a little downtime, but it's a perfect time to this is what I'm going to be doing. Finding ways to have a little downtime to reflect on this past year and what's going to happen in the new year. We'll definitely talk about that in January. We'll have some episodes on, starting the year off great, getting into the best habits personally and for your business to thrive in 23.
That is awesome. So yeah, everyone, stay safe, get out there, have a joyous rest of the holiday season, and wrap up 2022 with a bang. Be safe over New Year's, and we will catch you in 2023.
See you in 2023.
Be forever wandering, but not lost.
That too.